Hi all and welcome to a new video. While next week is the big mini extravaganza, this week we're going to be starting a new little fun series on the channel. Starting with which Star Wars Legion faction, or battle force technically, has the best core unit. I'll be going over each of the factions' individual core units, from worst to best, at the end reviewing the top 5 picks and crowning what I think is the current best core unit. Now, when I say battle forces included, I mean all the Empire battle forces and all the Rebel battle forces are going to be included in their respective factions, and the Mercenaries / Shadow Collective will have their own little shoutout section. Each section is also going to be listed out in what I think is the worst to best, although the worst is really kind of interchangeably with most of these. Starting with the Rebels, we have the Ewok Skirmishers. With low profile and unhindered, they can move across the battlefield with deceptive speed for a Speed 2 move. They have a single black dice attack, which is not that good, but not that terrible. The issue is, it is only close range, no range at all. With the white save and no surges, they are definitely one of the weakest cores the Rebel have access to. The Axe Ewok adds pierce and impact, but having primitive weapons to begin with doesn't make it that much better. On to the next one are the Fleet Troopers. Now, it was actually kind of hard to decide between these and the other two choices. Actually, I think all three main Rebel Troopers can be kind of used interchangeably. I'm more leaned into the current meta for what I think is the best, but it's the meta. This could change. All three of these versions of the Rebel Troopers are all good at different things. The Fleet Troopers are a more close-range version of Rebel Troopers, ready to help with zone control and can make certain Rebel lists shine because of that. Surge to attack and defend is great and needed for the Rebels, and the unique upgrades are a Scattergun and Barrage. One adds 2 red dice, and the other 1 black and 2 white with Blast and Impact. In general, I do believe they're just a little better than other Rebels at close range, but in longer range, they kind of don't shine the best, which is why they're second to worst. Next up are the Rebel Troopers. The bread and butter, they have white saves, a black dice for ranged and melee, and having a ranged option makes them automatically better than the Ewoks, and their range is longer than the Fleet Troopers, which makes them a little better as well. Nimble helps keep them alive by letting them keep dodge tokens constantly, and Search to Defend is great. There are upgrade cards where they shine, with the Z6 Trooper and the Ion Trooper both being solid additions to your Rebel force. The Ion Trooper especially is one of the better anti-vehicle attacks you have access to across the entire game. That being said, I do think the next one slightly outshines them and takes the crown as the best core Rebel Trooper. The Rebel Veterans are an even more defensive option than all the other Rebels, and it generates dodge tokens whenever an order is received. They have built-in synergies with emplacement troopers, which they can also bring along. Just like the mortars for the shore troopers, I don't really count them as core, but the emplacement being able to be taken with these are just slightly better, and the emplacement troopers are why you want to bring these. The CM-0/93 Trooper is amazing. With Critical 2 and 4 more white dice, you are tossing out large amounts of fire that has a chance of dealing damage to most anything on the field. For just 8 points more than the normal Rebel Trooper, you have a unit that does great at synergizing with the current better and meta Rebel lists and keeping alive just a little bit longer, which makes me think that they're just slightly better in general. I've also seen a lot of Rebel winning lists bringing them as well, which makes me believe again, right now, they're probably the best core unit the Rebels have access to. Moving on to the Empire, we are starting with the worst they have, which is kind of sad because the Empire has a really, really solid core lineup. In fact, the Shore Troopers alone are actually good. They're solid. I would never say they're terrible. But when everything is good, you have to pick the least good. So, I chose Shore Troopers. They are an aim token generating Stormtrooper, but they do lack precise. Being able to be more aggressive and moving and shooting is a fun way to play, and Shore Troopers are not useless. They also give you access to mortars, which allow you to do a long-range pressuring fire. However, the lack of any surges make them very situational, and for the point increase, not as good as the normal Stormtroopers. Next up are Snowtroopers. In unending and unyielding advance, Snowtroopers can aim, move, and shoot. With surge to crit and red saves, they have the strength of Stormtroopers and more. Steady is what makes this unit work, and they are more threatening than they seem. They have access to be a Flame Trooper and an Ion Trooper, both of which had great anti-infantry and vehicle. I was a little too critical of the Ion Trooper in the past, and then it got used against me, and while I do think it's slightly overcosted, it is useful when it actually hits. Snowtroopers are really good at steadily moving across the battlefield and keeping up pressure on an opponent, and are surprisingly more mobile than they seem, since they can always shoot. You can move them twice and then shoot, It's really good, actually. I ran against armies that just ran 4 units of Snowtroopers, and it is terrifying. Next up are Stormtroopers. The bread and butter of most Empire lists, the Stormtroopers are amazing. Precise 1 is near perfect for an Empire gunline list. Red saves and surge to hit are fantastic and a solid improvement to the Rebel troopers, and they have access to 4 unique upgrades, 2 gunners, 1 sniper, and a rocket launcher. This lends to a ridiculous amount of diversity, which makes the Stormtroopers just flat out one of the best core units in the entire game, but they are slightly outshined by their Battle Force variant. The Stormtrooper Heavy Response unit is an even more buttered bread and butter unit. The Heavy Response unit adds a lot to the Stormtroopers. You keep Precise 1, you keep the red saves, you keep the surges to hit. However, you also get Unhindered, which ignores the effects of difficult terrain, and Flexible Response 2. So those 4 unique upgrades you have access to, you can now take dual gunners. You can take a gunner and a rocket launcher, a gunner and the longer range sniper. You can take the sniper and the rocket launcher if you really want to for some reason. This is by far the best core unit and part of the reason Blizzard Force ever dominated the meta. The Empire being able to get out that many more shots with the heavy response unit is fantastic, and it makes the Stormtroopers just that much better. And while they do cost a bit more, I still think on paper they are the best core unit. Now, we are going to toss in an honorable mention here for the Imperial Remnants. While I did say they would include the Corp and Battle Forces, this feels unfair. The Death Troopers and the Scout Troopers both outclass the normal Imperial core units, and I would say the Death Troopers would win this entire thought puzzle without any problem. Now that I've broken my own rules, back to the actual, rating of everything. The Republic only has access to 2 core units, so this is going to be easy. The Phase 1 clones are okay. They are one of the most expensive core units in the entire game. Fire support is useful, but red saves and no surges makes them a little weak. Their strength comes from the variety of upgrades, just like the Stormtroopers. The 4 unique upgrades that can be taken by them allow them to go into pure gunline or anti-vehicle. That being said, I'm not the biggest fan of Phase 1 clones for their price. I don't think you get that much more than you would from, say, a Stormtrooper. And they're cheaper by like 8 points. Next up is the Phase 2 clones, the only other choice the Republic has and their best core unit. The Phase 2 clones are much better. They are the most expensive core unit in the game. However, Reliable 1 makes them much better than the Phase 1 clones, and they synergize so well with so many Republic command cards that allow you to get even more surge tokens. The 2 upgrades they have are the Z6 Trooper, which has a ton of white dice, and a Mortar Trooper, which gives a pretty decent long-range attack that is critical 1 and suppressive. They are better than Phase 1, and they have Courage 2, which makes them deceptively amazing for a core unit. It can be really hard to remove one of these with the current cover rules from the board, which makes them the best core unit for the Republic. Moving on to the Separatists, who only are 2 as well, this was a super hard choice. The B1s and B2s are hand in hand. Both are technically the best depending on what kind of list you want to run. However, I do think the B2s are slightly more versatile, so let's get into the B1s. They're interesting. AI attack is a downside, however, Coordinate Droid Trooper gives them a way to avoid this. Proper B1 placement and use feels amazing. They have access to so many amazing upgrades, and each of them is absolutely worth taking. For the price, the range, the damage, even with white defenses and no Sturges, they are still a beast on the table. This is the cheapest core unit in the game, unless I'm forgetting something. The Ewoks might be cheaper, actually. I didn't double check that before this. This is one of the cheapest core units in the game, and they are amazing. They're fantastic. If you want to bring a Separatist Horde list, like checker pattern out your B1, so even if one unit goes, you can still get the orders around, and just selectively choose when you want to activate each and every unit in your Separatist list. That is a perfect way to play, and it is amazing to do and pull off. However, the B2 Super Battle Droids are fantastic on their own. They fulfill a very different role than the B1s. While the B1s are there as like a cannon fodder and to take a ton of shots, with 2 health, 2 courage, and armor 1, the B2 Super Battle Droids are beasts on the battlefield. They're specifically made to deal damage and stay on the field for much longer. With an anti-infantry and anti-vehicle upgrades, they have a lot of extra firepower that raises them above the B1s just that little bit. While I love B1s, the B2s just barely come out ahead when it comes to this. You really get that sense and that feel that the B2s are a staying power on the battlefield. Even with the white saves, really. Now on to the Shadow Collective / Mercenaries. The Pykes Syndicate are amazing and changed the entire meta for Legion for a long time. For such a simple sheet, the constant dodge token generation, the ability to use them on crits makes them amazing for the price. They have a solid anti-vehicle and a closer range anti-infantry upgrades, and they can add a capel for extra courage. However, after the nerfs, I do not think they are the best core unit for the Shadow Collective anymore. That goes to the only other core unit the Shadow Collective has, the Black Sun Enforcers, which are fantastic. They have solid range, damage, move, and upgrades. I love running these as a close range unit. They have a pair of cards that can make them amazing against infantry or vehicles like most core units. Running these with a battle bus is a blast, and they're by far one of my favorite looking core units as well, which makes me a little biased. While technically these can go hand in hand with Pykes and it can go either way, and they Black Suns have also taken a nerf, I do find the extra firepower with the current cover rules to be just as useful as the Pykes' extra survivability. So, we've gone over everything real quick and what I think each best in each faction is, so what's the best overall? Who has the best core unit? We have the Rebel Veterans, the Stormtrooper Heavy Response Unit, the Phase 2 Clones, the B2 Super Battle Droids, and the Black Sun Enforcers. We can unfortunately eliminate the Rebel Veterans and the Phase 2 Clones pretty quick, as they are not as good as the Stormtrooper Heavy Response Unit and the B2 Super Battle Droids in my opinion. And because I think they look slightly better, the Black Sun Enforcers go next, leaving just the B2s versus the Heavy Response Unit. So with a brief drum roll, I will go into who I think is the best out of both of them, and it should be pretty obvious unfortunately. The best core unit in Legion is the Stormtrooper Heavy Response Unit, followed right behind by the normal Stormtroopers and then the B2s. The Heavy Response Unit is amazing. It's expensive to get both upgrades, but it's very worth it. In general, Empire has the strongest core choices, and while I love the B2s, they just can't compete with this much firepower. I have went against the Heavy Response Unit a lot during the Blizzard Force meta, and even after the changes, they're still worth it. The Heavy Response Unit can just bring so much firepower to the field that it feels like it should be a Special Forces choice, which honestly is what it is. But even if they did not have this, I would still choose the normal Stormtroopers. Having access to red saves, surge to hit, and really solid upgrade lines just makes them fantastic. And kind of all around, really. With the start of Mini Stravaganza next week, we will be covering all of it. And while this was a fun thought puzzle, I'll do the rest of the unit types in the future as well. Next week is Mini Stravaganza coverage. For those of you who are wondering where my How to Play Legion video I said I wanted out by the end of last month is, the answer is I couldn't get it to look or work right. I don't know if it was my recording software, what I was trying to do on Tabletop Simulator, but the first draft of that video has pretty much been entirely scrapped, which I kind of expected. I want the video to be great. I don't want it to be good. Most of the content I make right now I feel like has tiny little flaws, but I'm okay with that because I try to keep myself to at least one video a week, even though I want to get to 2 videos a week release schedule, and with, unfortunately, my crazy busy schedule right now, this is about all I can do. I feel bad that I put so much time into a version of the video no one is ever going to see because I feel like it isn't good, but it will still come out. My goal now is to just make it so I'm happy with it. And hopefully it'll be out soon. I don't know if it's because I don't think I'm the best teacher, but that is where we are at. It will be out sometime. I hope all of you have a wonderful weekend. I hope you enjoy your weeks coming up. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. This is all my opinion, but it was a fun opinion to have, and this was a fun thought puzzle. I actually really liked making this video, so I think next week I'll do, after Mini Extravaganza, probably Special Forces, or Heavy. I might do Heavy. That'll be a nice easy one after trying to work so hard to get the Mini Extravaganza video out the day after all the reveals. So have a wonderful week all, and I'll see you all later.